Olivia Carter always believed she had everything she needed to be happy. As a talented fashion designer working for an exclusive boutique in New York, she thrived in a world of creativity and elegance. Every morning, she woke up excited to sketch new designs, bringing her artistic visions to life. With a cozy apartment, supportive colleagues, and a dream of launching her own brand, Olivia felt content. Her life wasn't perfect, but it was enough. But on an ordinary morning, as she sipped her coffee in the design studio, an unexpected phone call shattered her sense of security. "Olivia, you need to come see me right away. It's important." Her father's voice rang through the line, unusually tense. A frown creased Olivia's forehead, unease creeping into her chest. Her father was the owner of Carter Textiles, a prestigious luxury fabric company that had been in their family for 3 generations. But never before had he called her with such desperation. "What's going on, Dad?" "We're in serious trouble, Olivia, and only you can save this family." Her grip tightened around the phone, unaware that the peaceful life she had cherished was about to be swept into an unstoppable storm. Olivia Carter rushed to her father's office, her heart pounding with anxiety. As she stepped inside, she saw him sitting behind his desk, looking as if he had aged 10 years in just a few days. Piles of contracts, unpaid invoices, and financial statements covered the table, each document screaming one undeniable truth. The company was in crisis. "Dad, what's going on?" Olivia asked, her voice filled with concern. Her father exhaled heavily. "The company is on the verge of collapse, Olivia. I made a deal with Hayes Industries, but it fell apart. If we don't settle our debts soon, Carter Textiles will go under." Olivia's breath caught at the name. Hayes Industries was a giant in the textile world, and its CEO, Ben Hayes, was infamous for being ruthless, calculating, and completely unwilling to compromise. "Can't you renegotiate?" she asked, clinging to hope. Her father shook his head. "Ben Hayes doesn't negotiate. But there's one way." Olivia frowned. "What do you mean?" Her father looked at her, guilt heavy in his eyes. "Ben made an offer. If you marry him, he'll clear our debts and ensure the company's survival. This is the only way to protect everything our family has built." Olivia froze, as if the air had been knocked out of her lungs. "Marriage? To a man I've never even met? That's insane," she nearly shouted. "I know, but we have no other choice." She stared into her father's desperate eyes. If she refused, her family would lose everything. If she accepted, she would be sacrificing her freedom, her dreams, her future, for a marriage built on nothing but obligation. Her hands clenched into fists, her mind reeling. I need time to think." But deep down, she already knew there was no other way out. 3 days later, Olivia stood in front of the towering Hayes Industries building, her heart pounding against her ribs. Somewhere inside this sleek glass skyscraper was the man she was supposed to marry, Ben Hayes, the infamous, unyielding CEO. She took a deep breath, stepped into the elevator, and rode it up to the top floor. The doors opened to reveal a luxurious yet sterile office, dark wood desk, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, and seated behind the desk was Ben Hayes. He didn't look up right away as she entered. Tall, broad-shouldered, impeccably dressed in a tailored suit, his presence was as commanding as the empire he controlled. But what struck Olivia the most was his gaze, sharp, unreadable, and devoid of warmth. "Olivia Carter," Ben finally acknowledged her, his deep voice calm yet authoritative. She folded her arms, standing her ground. "I came here to say this up front. I don't want to marry you." Ben leaned back in his chair, his eyes assessing her with quiet amusement. "Is that so?" "This is a mistake. I can't marry someone I don't even know." Ben remained unbothered. Instead, he took a slow sip of his coffee before responding, "Then prove it." Olivia frowned, her heart pounding. "What do you mean?" He set his cup down with deliberate slowness, a smirk barely touching his lips. "Live with me for 1 month. If, after that, you still want to walk away, I'll personally open the door for you. No conditions, no obligations." The challenge in his words was clear, Olivia felt cornered, but she also knew this was her only chance to escape this arrangement on her own terms. Taking a steadying breath, she met his gaze head-on. Fine. 1 month. She had no idea what lay ahead, but one thing was certain: she wouldn't let Ben Hayes control her life. Olivia dragged her suitcase into Ben Hayes' luxurious penthouse, feeling like she had just walked into a gilded cage. Everything about the place screamed wealth. The dark hardwood floors, the towering glass walls overlooking the New York skyline, and the sleek, ultra-modern furniture that seemed too perfect to be lived in. Ben stood in the center of the living room, arms crossed as he watched her. "You have 1 month, Olivia. Try to make yourself comfortable." She took a deep breath, masking the frustration bubbling inside her. She didn't want to be here, but she also wasn't going to let Ben win. If he thought she would just sit back and accept this marriage, he was dead wrong. And so, Olivia decided to fight back in her own way. First attack, ruining Ben's perfect morning routine. She knew Ben followed a strict morning schedule. Wake up at 6 a.m., work out, then enjoy his black coffee in absolute silence. So, the next morning, Olivia made sure to blast EDM music at full volume, shaking the entire apartment. Ben emerged from his room, his hair slightly tousled, his sharp eyes narrowing, but there was no anger. He simply picked up the remote, turned off the music, and looked at her. "You seem very enthusiastic about starting the day," he said coolly. Olivia shrugged, feigning innocence. "Don't you need a little energy boost?" Ben just let out a quiet sigh, shook his head, and continued his routine as if nothing had happened. Second attack, accidentally ruining his clothes. Determined not to let up, Olivia took her next step. One morning, just as Ben was about to leave for work, she accidentally spilled her coffee all over his crisp white dress shirt. She braced herself for a reaction, anger, irritation, something, but Ben simply glanced down at the stain, exhaled lightly, and said, "It seems you shouldn't be trusted around hot beverages." Then, without another word, he unbuttoned the shirt, tossed it aside, changed into another, and walked out as if nothing had happened. Olivia clenched her jaw. Why wasn't he reacting the way she expected? But if he thought she was giving up, he had another thing coming. "All right, Ben Hayes," she muttered. "I'll make you regret this marriage." She just didn't realize she would be the one to change first. The following days, Olivia continued her mischief, determined to push Ben to his breaking point. Yet, no matter what she did, he remained calm, almost as if nothing she did could shake him. She couldn't understand it. How could a man as cold and ruthless as Ben Hayes have such patience? One morning, she tried something different. She accidentally used up all the coffee in the house, knowing Ben couldn't start his day without it. But instead of reacting, Ben simply glanced at her, grabbed his coat, and left. 20 minutes later, he returned with 2 cups of coffee. Placing one in front of her, he said in a level tone, "If you're going to punish me, at least do something that doesn't inconvenience both of us." Olivia stared at the steaming cup in front of her, feeling something shift deep inside. But the real turning point happened late one night. She had gone to the kitchen for water when she heard Ben's voice, low, tired, and strangely vulnerable. "I didn't want to do it, but I had no choice." Olivia stopped mid-step, her breath catching. Ben was on the phone, but his usual commanding tone had vanished, replaced by something raw, something wounded. "When my mother died, I learned that love isn't just about happiness. It's about knowing that one day you might lose everything. And I wasn't sure if I could survive that pain a second time." Olivia felt her breath hitch, a tightness forming in her chest. She had thought Ben was emotionless, incapable of feeling, but now, for the first time, she saw the truth. He wasn't unfeeling. He was protecting himself. And for the first time, she didn't see him as an enemy anymore. She saw him as a man, with a past, with wounds he had never allowed anyone to see. And that realization shook her more than anything else ever had. Just when Olivia had started seeing Ben in a new light, her past came crashing back into her life. One afternoon, while working in her studio, her phone buzzed with an unknown number. She hesitated before answering. "Olivia, it's me." The deep, familiar voice made Olivia freeze. She held her breath, her heart pounding. Lucas Bennett, the man she had once loved, the man who had left her without a word. Her grip on the phone tightened. "Why are you calling me?" "I know you never wanted this marriage," Lucas said, his voice urgent. "Leave Ben. Come back to me." A storm of emotions surged through Olivia. Part of her wanted to hang up immediately. Another part couldn't deny that Lucas had once meant everything to her. That evening, as she prepared for a major event with Ben, her mind was still in turmoil. She stepped into the living room where Ben was waiting. The moment their eyes met, she knew he had noticed her hesitation. "What's wrong?" Ben asked, his voice calm but sharp. Olivia opened her mouth, ready to lie, but then she decided to tell the truth. "Lucas reached out to me." Ben's expression remained unreadable, but the air around them seemed to shift. "And?" he asked. Olivia didn't know how to answer. She had loved Lucas, but now? She looked at Ben, the man who had endured her stubbornness, the man who had been gentler than she ever expected, the man who had let her see parts of him that no one else did. "I don't know," she whispered, and that was what scared her the most. She wasn't sure what she wanted anymore. That night, Olivia couldn't sleep. She lay awake, torn between two parts of her life. Lucas was her first love, the past she had cherished. But Ben was the man who had stood beside her for the past month, the man she had never expected to understand, yet somehow, he was the only one who truly unsettled her heart. Her choice became clear the next evening, as she arrived at a prestigious charity gala with Ben. The room glittered with chandeliers, filled with influential guests, but Olivia only saw the two men in front of her. Lucas stepped closer, his voice lowering to an almost desperate whisper. "Olivia, tell me you don't still love me. Tell me that what we had meant nothing." Ben said nothing. He simply stood beside her, silent, unshaken, making no attempt to sway her decision. Olivia felt her heart clench. Lucas was her past. Ben was her present. And more than anything, she realized where her heart truly belonged. Her pulse raced, her mind screaming with 1,000 emotions, but in the end, there was only one truth. She turned to Ben, stepped forward, and kissed him. Right there, in front of everyone, sealing her decision in a way words never could. The room fell silent for a heartbeat before applause erupted, but Olivia barely heard it. All she felt was Ben, the way his lips pressed against hers, firm yet gentle, as if he had been waiting for this moment all along. When she finally pulled away, Lucas stood frozen, disbelief in his eyes. Ben looked at her, and for the first time, his gaze wasn't distant or unreadable. It was warm, steady, and full of something she had never expected from him. "I win," he murmured near her ear, his voice deep and filled with quiet amusement. Olivia let out a soft laugh. "You think this was a competition?" Ben merely shrugged, a smirk playing at his lips. "Weren't you testing me all along?" For the first time since stepping into this marriage, Olivia felt her heart settle. Finally, she knew exactly what she wanted. After the gala, Olivia and Ben returned to the penthouse in comfortable silence. Neither of them spoke, but something between them had undeniably shifted. As they settled in, Ben suddenly broke the quiet. "Olivia, there's something you don't know." She turned to him, surprised by the seriousness in his tone. "What is it?" Ben swirled the wine in his glass, his expression unreadable. "Do you remember a little boy who used to get bullied in school?" Olivia frowned, trying to recall. Then, a long-forgotten memory surfaced. A scrawny boy being taunted by classmates, and her, stepping in to defend him, despite not being strong herself. "Don't tell me." Her eyes widened, her heartbeat quickening. Ben chuckled softly, a rare smile touching his lips, one that wasn't distant or calculated. "Yes, that was me." She was speechless. "From that day on, I promised myself that if I ever had the chance, I would protect you, just like you once protected me," Ben said quietly. "You may have forgotten, but I never did." Her throat tightened, emotions swelling inside her. Shock, warmth, and something she couldn't quite name. Then, Ben stood up, reaching into his pocket and pulling out a small velvet box. Slowly, he knelt before her. "The first time I proposed to you, it was out of obligation. But this time, I'm doing it because I truly want you by my side." He opened the box, revealing a sparkling ring. "Give me a chance, Olivia. Stay with me. Not for your family, not because of duty, but because you want to." She looked into his eyes. There was no force, no pressure, only sincerity. A soft smile broke across her lips, tears slipping down her cheeks. Yes, and for the first time, Olivia knew this marriage was no longer an arrangement. It was her choice. 1 month after Ben's heartfelt proposal, Olivia stood in the bridal suite, dressed in an elegant white gown. She traced the delicate lace with her fingertips, letting the reality of today sink in. This time, she was getting married, not out of duty, but out of love. The first time she had stood at the altar with Ben, it had been a business deal. But today, as she prepared to walk down the aisle, there was no hesitation in her heart. Outside, the guests had taken their seats. The venue shimmered under soft golden lights, white petals lined the aisle, and the air was filled with quiet anticipation. But Olivia only focused on one person, the man waiting at the end of the aisle. Ben. He stood in a sharp black tuxedo, but it wasn't his polished appearance that made her breath catch. It was his eyes, deep, unwavering, filled with a promise that from this moment forward, he would always be by her side. Each step she took felt lighter, as if she were finally walking toward the life she had chosen. The music faded, the murmurs of the guests disappeared. There was only Ben, only the man who had changed everything. Memories flooded her mind, their tense beginning, her stubborn defiance, his quiet patience, and the moment her heart chose him before she even realized it. When she placed her hand in his, warmth spread through her chest. The officiant's voice rang through the hall. "Olivia Carter, do you take Ben Hayes as your husband, to love and stand by him for the rest of your life?" She looked up at Ben, her heart steady. "I do." Ben's lips curved into a rare but genuine smile. "Then you may kiss your bride." Ben didn't hesitate. He pulled her close, pressing a deep, tender kiss to her lips. A kiss of devotion, of a love that had defied all odds. Applause erupted around them, but Olivia only heard the sound of her own heartbeat, beating in sync with the man she loved. Today, she had officially become Mrs. Hayes. And this wasn't the end. This was just the beginning.